Welcome to BigTent USA. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kitty Douglas, and I'm on the board. I'm a board member at BigTent. I'm delighted to host today's conversation with Karen Nussbaum and Joseph Loyacono. Did I do it? Bustos of Working America. At BigTent USA, we put democracy above partisanship. What started as 10 women around a kitchen table in 2020 is now a movement of 20,000 people strong, all passionate about civic participation. We host intimate educational events like this one with respected thought leaders. Find our upcoming events in our newsletter and on social media, and visit our website to RSVP. We provide ways for you to become more civically engaged, and here are 3 things that you can do today. Go to our website and visit our Do Something page for actions to take, no matter your level of civic participation. Visit our Project 2025 page to learn how the plan will impact you and your family negatively. And use our Talking Points tool to master meaningful conversation on today's issues. Please share all this information with your friends and family and join us to make a difference. All the links will be placed in the chat. I am thrilled to introduce to you our guests. Joseph Loyacono, did I do that again? Bustos. Joe is an organizer with Working America. He has a personal and professional passion for making politics more attuned to the needs of working people and continues to pursue that goal by involving volunteers in the process of connecting with working class voters. His time at Working America has been spent expanding and improving volunteer opportunities, specifically Working America's personalized letter program, which we'll hear more about today. Joe continues to believe in the fight to and advocate for a political and economic system that benefits all people. Karen Nussbaum, the founding director of Working America and the Working America Education Fund, has been fighting for the rights of working people for more than 4 decades. She was founder and director of 9 to 5, the National Association of Working Women, and president of District 925 SEIU. Karen served as the director of the United States Department of Labor Women's Bureau during the first Clinton administration, the highest seat in the federal government devoted to women's issues. Prior to taking on the leadership of Working America, Karen served as special assistant to the AFL-CIO President John Sweeney. Welcome to BigTent, Karen and Joe. Please take it away.
Great. Thank you, Kitty, and thank you, BigTent. What a wonderful organization. I'm so impressed with the work that you do and very excited to be working with you. And I want to talk today a little bit about the biggest, most effective organization that you never heard of, and that is Working America, and why it's so important in this chaotic environment. It's hard to believe that this week I feel even more urgent than I did the last week or the week before, but my guess is that that's just going to continue. And so we need all the tools that we have to make a difference. Working America has nearly 4.5 million members. They are working class moderates. They are not the people who are joining this webinar or almost anything else that you or I normally do. They vote, but they don't like politics, and some of them hate politics, and they're not in any other progressive organization. But with these folks, these working class swing voters who are moderate and apolitical, we have an astonishing 10% persuasion rate, so that 1 out of 10 people that we engage with, we change their vote. And since these are voters, these are people who are no longer voting for the bad guy, but are now going to vote for the good guy. And that translates, because of the scale of what we do, into hundreds of thousands of votes. So how is that even possible? Well, the political scientists, and we've got lots of them that we work with, say that it's because we test everything that we do. We test the issues, we test the message, we test the platform. We even test where to locate our office, where we're going to get the most people to come in to come work with us. We test our digital and our door programs and how they are different from each other. And then we test how we layer them all together. And these political scientists about that testing, they're right. That is really important. And that's why we put so much effort into it. And this cycle alone, we're going to do 1,000 randomized control tests. And those are the top of the line kind of tests. That's the kind of test that they're doing on the medicine that we take. We hold off, we treat one group, we don't treat another group, and then we look at the results. And now we have to retest everything because we've got a new candidate, the very awesome Kamala Harris. But it changes a lot, and we have to know what we're doing, not fly blind. But I think it's not just the testing. I think it's because we do what my mother told me to do, and that is to listen more than I talk. And that's how we operate at Working America. We don't tell people they're wrong. We tell them something that they don't know. And I believe that we'll need both in this election. We'll need the science and we'll need the soul. And while there is no one path to victory, we're going to need everybody getting out their constituents. This is an election that's in complete upheaval. And if we don't win a significant part of those swing voters, we won't win. And that's the role of Working America, and volunteers have a very important part to play. So what is Working America and how do we work? Well, I've been an organizer. It's a little bit longer, Kitty, than you said, not 4 decades. It's more than 5 decades, since the late 1960s. I was 18 in 1968 when the world was blowing up, and it really informed who I became. But I've always mostly been a big tent kind of person. I've always believed that that the more you try to bring people in and change people from there, the better off we'll be. So while I was very active at the beginning against the war in Vietnam and for women's rights, when I took those lessons about organizing into my job. So when I got a job as a clerical worker, we started an organization called 9 to 5, which some of you may have heard of because my friend from the anti-war movement, Jane Fonda, made a major motion picture inspired by our work. And the basic idea, again, here was that we would create an organization for women who didn't identify with the women's movement. And in fact, almost every person that we recruited into 9 to 5 started off by saying, I'm no women's liber, but, which was the language we used in those days, but I should be paid more. Or why'd I have to just, train the guy who became my own supervisor, or things like that. So they agreed with us on the issues. They weren't there on the lingo, but they embraced a new movement that reflected who they were and how they talked and their aspirations. So fast forward to 2003, and I'm at the AFL-CIO. We are preparing for the 2004 election, another scary time. And as we looked at our union members, we could see that union members, for the most part, like by 70, 75%, tended to vote for the endorsed candidate of the union. And that's because their membership mattered to them, and they felt like they trusted their union to get good information on the economy. And so they trusted their recommendation when it came to vote because they had some agency around the economy. But when we looked at their neighbors, the neighbors of these union members in working class neighborhoods, especially in white working class neighborhoods, we could see they were being sheared off by a right-wing agenda. And it was the rise of the very highly politicized evangelical churches, the greatest impact of the NRA and the gun movement and so on. And we found that when we talked with those folks, their agenda was informed by those social movements, and they were more likely to vote on, as we used to say in those days, guns, God, and gays. and that it was an environment where people were again focused on either grievances or side issues that were keeping them off of the track on the basic economic health of the country. So we took the model of 9 to 5 and we put it in this new environment. And that is that we would build another Big Tent type organization. We knew that there were no shortcuts. And so we started a conversation with a very low bar for membership. And we knocked on doors all across these working class neighborhoods. And most of the time, Fox News was on the television right behind the screen door. And it was a simple conversation. Hi, I'm Karen. I'm from Working America. We're part of the AFL-CIO. What's the most important issue to you, for you and your family? And we would talk about healthcare, education, retirement. Those are the kinds of issues that people were bringing up. Well, the problem is that big corporations have way too much influence. And the solution is that we need strength in numbers. We need to band together to make our voices heard. Sign up tonight, become a member of Working America, and you can take an action right away. Sign a petition, call your representative, let 3 friends know about this useful information. 2 out of 3 people join. And in some communities of color, those numbers are even higher, 4 out of 5. It is amazingly popular, the basic notion that people should join together to express some power. And that's been true for the last 21 years. We communicate with our members year-round. We communicate on issues, not politics. We're hardly ever talking to people about politics until the very end. And it works. Let me give you just 2 quick examples. I was in Philadelphia not that long ago, and I was taking a taxi cab somewhere, and I'm talking to the cab driver, and he's telling me how bad his industry is. He can't make any money anymore. The structure of the industry is cratered. And I raised Working America, and he says, I know Working America. And he pulls the car over, and he pulls out his phone, and he shows me the texts that he gets from Working America. Now, I don't know if he reads every single text or if he takes the action, but I know that he identified Working America. He identifies with Working America, and he's likely to trust us when we come back to him and say, you know, Joseph, you told us that wages was your most important issue. Let me show you where the candidates stand on wages. Or a guy in Virginia named Richard. Mike was the canvasser. He told me this story about talking to Richard during a recent election, a governor's election in the state. And it's getting relatively close to the election. Mike goes to Richard's door. Richard, who are you voting for? He's voting for the Republican. Well, what's your most important issue, Richard? Confederate monuments. So Mike decides, I'm not going to pick a fight with Richard over Confederate monuments. And instead he says, Richard, you might be interested in this. We've got a petition to expand Medicaid in this state. And Richard says, I care about Medicaid. My daughter's on Medicaid. He signs the petition. Mike shows him where the candidates stand on Medicaid, and Richard decides to change his vote. That's how we do it. We change votes by developing a relationship with these voters based on their concerns, and then we become a trusted messenger. So let's look at the 2024 election, if you can bear to. I see 2 Americas, and I'm not just looking at the red and blue America, and that's a very deep divide, but that's baked in. We're not going to change many hard blues, and which we don't need to. We're not going to lose many hard blues. We're not going to change many hard reds. But as important in this country is this divide between people who are political and are paying attention and people who are apolitical and not paying attention. Right after the debate, we talked to 7,000 voters at their doors, and half of them hadn't paid any attention to the debate. That's true for a lot of folks. Millions of people don't care about politics. They don't watch cable news. And in fact, over the last couple of years, what we found is the best indicator for whether someone could change their mind about something is whether they watch cable news or not what their political party identification is. So while we have two elections, two Americas, we also have two elections. There's the election that people like us are engaged in, and for speaking for myself, am in a frenzy about. Democracy is on the ballot. It's the future and the character of our country. It's the colossal damage that a Trump administration will bring to our country. I am really motivated by that. I will do everything I can to prevent that from happening. But that's not the election that these voters that we're talking about, the working American members, are participating in. For most of our people that we talk to, democracy is not on the ballot. What they're worried about is how they're going to pay for air conditioning in a heat wave, how they're going to pay for medicine, how they're going to pay their rent. So we need to talk to them about their election while we're waging our own. And Joe will just in a minute give you details about the program, but I want to give you just the basic outline of it. We run a massive canvas. We go door to door, which is where we really first break through to people and bring them into our conversation. We are, over this cycle, we are adding 2 million additional members because that's how important we think it is. We run a massive social media campaign on lots of different platforms. We'll go back to folks and do voter contact after Labor Day. And that's where we do those comparisons like we did with Richard about where the candidates stand. And we run a big letter writing campaign with a goal of 1 million letters to working American members. And again, they're on issues. They're not about politics. And while it may feel counterintuitive, we find that through our testing that the most effective way to break through and to gain a vote is to talk to people about issues. We're focused on healthcare because that remains the top issue for most of these voters. We've got a letter that lays out the issues. You write a handwritten note about some way in which healthcare affects you, and then you hand address the envelope. Something as simple as that results in 2 votes for us out of every 100 letters that you send. So you could, like, I just had a party with friends. We had 10 folks together. We ate, we wrote letters, and in a few hours, we gained a bunch of votes. We finished 500 letters. It's the most effective way for a volunteer to gain votes. We would love to have you all be part of our program. We know that together we can win in 2024 and that we can not just win the election, but we can realign working class voters to join the Big Tent. So let me turn it over to Joe, who can walk us through the program.
Thank you so much, Karen. And I'm going to share my screen. So some of this we'll kind of go quickly through and then give a little bit of the nitty gritty on sort of what we do, why we do it, sort of the numbers behind what we're doing this year. Just like Karen mentioned, we are looking to add roughly 2 million new working American members this year. We are concentrating in 5 battleground states. For those of y'all that are paying any attention, none of these will probably come as a surprise to you. Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. We're trying to gain those members by late summer 2024. Again, we're looking at roughly the end of next month. Once that happens, we are going to switch to try and persuade those members to support labor-endorsed candidates from September up until the election. Many of the states that we see here as our target states are places where we've had a long-standing presence on the ground, as well as with labor leaders, and it's going to allow us to not only grow our membership base, but continue to establish ourselves as a trusted messenger around issues and races that affect the everyday lives of working people. Also important to notice, we are planning on holding roughly 2.5 million voter contact conversations this year, a number that is as large as the monumental task that we have before us. So a little bit about Working America, sort of more broadly, is I think a good way to think about what we do and why we do it is really synthesized in these four concepts, each a crucial component of how and why we truly are building a massive effort to mobilize working people to fight for an economy and a political system that works for everyone. So what defines our approach? First, like Karen mentioned, is membership. Membership matters for folks that we talk to across our experiments. We find that our canvas consistently has a 3 to 5 times greater impact on persuasion conversations for our membership than it does on the general public on both vote choice and turnout. Nationally, our membership digital program is roughly 8 to 10 times more effective than digital content that's served to the general public. These numbers really make it clear that membership is what continues to make our programs and our outreach so effective. Second, year-round contact. Instead of just hearing from us every 2 or 4 years in election cycles, folks that are Working America members are constantly getting engagement from us year round about important issues happening in their states and in their communities. Third, like Karen mentioned, refining and testing through reports from what folks are telling us on the doors and constant survey testing. We are always on the lookout for emerging trends and ways to further refine and tweak the ways that we are interacting with members and voters. And finally, electoral contact. At the end of next month, again, we will switch that membership recruitment to voter contact. This means we will be providing Working America members with information on where candidates stand on everything from healthcare to good paying jobs to the cost of rent. So for a better example of kind of what that looks like, we're using the term here, community saturation. So with these sort of 4 pillars, what we can see here on the screen is a small slice of a map of a neighborhood in South Philly. We're really aiming to saturate communities by engaging in conversations on the door, over the phone, with people like the cab driver that Karen was mentioning, over text messages, and even now through targeted news ads on sites like Facebook. This really allows us to have the heart of our organization, like Karen mentioned, that is the door-to-door canvassing conversation, really begin to work in concert with communication mediums that continually allow us to reinforce our messaging for those that are close enough to get a knock on the door, but also allows us to be nimble and able to engage with folks that maybe are in rural areas or far away from a canvassing office. For many, they will receive multiple forms of contact throughout the entire cycle, allowing us not only to reinforce the messages that we're giving to folks, but continue to build that relationship of trust between our members and the organization. So I saw a question in the chat of what kind of stuff we're hearing on the doors. One of the things that we have been hearing most about recently is healthcare, especially in battleground states like Pennsylvania. The photos on the screen you can see here are from canvassers who are having door conversations in and around the Philadelphia area. So as part of recent membership recruitment efforts, these were taken in April and late May. Working America has tracked the top issues of folks we talk to on the doors. There are roughly 50,000 door knocks in that time frame. A staggering 42% of people said that healthcare was top of mind when they thought about what issue was most important to them and what thing kept them up at night. Of these, 7 in 10 mentioned something about the cost of things like prescriptions, copays, or simply being able to seek care at all. This really begins to track with historical issue data that we have been collecting in the states over the better part of a decade, and consistently places healthcare as a top 3 most commonly mentioned issue by folks we talk to, both on the door and over the phone. With that in mind, we've sort of taken the importance of healthcare to our members and used it as a focus for the main volunteer offering for this year, which, as Karen mentioned, are personalized letters. So data from more than 1 million face-to-face conversations really indicates one simple but powerful trend, and that is how much someone cares about an issue directly relates to who they vote for. This may seem simple and straightforward, but it really continues to have profound effects on how we communicate with members. Our personalized letters use this finding to shift the salience of certain issues to those that progressive and labor-backed candidates are perceived to be stronger on. This perception, measured through continued canvass and survey tracking data, gives us a better understanding of how to reach folks for whom traditional political messaging is often ineffective. And this is where, again, our personalized letters come in. They're focusing on real, tangible issues instead of partisan messaging, and allows them to cut through the noise of things like campaign mailers or TV ads. The targets of these letters, again, like Karen mentioned, are folks who do not watch cable news regularly and also do not have college degrees. They are working people who are first and foremost concerned about the basic necessities of how to afford rent, provide for their families, and to see their communities thrive. So, what does a letter look like? Here is what one of our personalized letters look like. It is sent in a plain envelope that is hand addressed to a working American member in one of our target states. It contains a personal statement written by a volunteer. And finally, a call to action. In this case, a number to text to get involved with our organizing around healthcare access and affordability. These letters are aimed at sharing personal stories written by volunteers about collective experiences with healthcare, everything from how much it costs to see a doctor to affordability or access of things like insulin, to things like folks scared about losing their access to comprehensive reproductive care. We're really aiming to connect with working American members on common experiences and create a sense that the problems that we face are shared not only geographically, but importantly across political lines, and that there is something that we all can do collectively to solve them. We've been able to consistently show through independently tested data and surveying that driving folks to the polls with issues like healthcare in mind increases the chance that they will turn to labor and progressive backed candidates. So again, in order to meet what is looking like yet another most important election of our lifetimes, we're aiming to send 1 million of these personalized letters by October 22nd of this year. And finally, with, again, as Karen mentioned, just shy of that 4.5 million member mark and always counting, we're really poised to have an outsized impact on the direction of our country and our economic and political systems. With a year that, again, feels like it has thrown every single twist and turn imaginable, and I can only imagine there may be a few more in store for us. We are remaining resolute in our commitment to building a truly mass movement that is attuned to and fighting for the well-being of working people. We're excited to share this fight with you all and really look forward to a resounding and final victory come November. And with that, Kitty, I will turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen and Joe. That was incredible. I think I'd like to start with the slide that you were talking about, your 4 quadrants. You were saying that recruitment, which is a big goal for you guys this year, is better when you have a working America member do the recruitment. Am I getting that right? When you're knocking on doors and that conversation begins, you want the member there to have that conversation.
Karen, you're on mute.
Karen, you're mute. Yeah.
We hire people from the community to become canvassers. So our canvas is a professional canvas with full-time jobs and benefits. They've got a union representing them, and they operate year-round. No, we get that high level of sign-up rate, 2 out of 3, consistently over time with our canvas. What Joe was saying is that the response rate of our members is 3 to 5, actually to 10 times as great than it is with members of the public. We're very effective with members of the public, but when we're asking folks to
Okay.
do something, change their mind, take an action, or vote for our endorsed candidate, our members are up to 10 times more likely to take to vote our way.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, because that seems like a really important point. Yeah, the best messengers are the people who really believe, right? And who are in
And
the fight.
our canvassers have an hour of training every single day. They don't just get their assignment and then walk out. They share how they, what are the best ways to answer this question or that? How do you, what's your best posture? How do you, have a really listen to what people are saying? All of that. Why are we doing this? What's important to you? All of that goes into our training. And so these are folks who care and get really good at their jobs.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So okay, so we start with the recruitment and the training. That seems so important, and then we move to the year-round contact, so that your members know that they're heard and seen. Do you guys react sort in real time to say, like, I was reading about child labor laws, for instance, that we seem to be on a negative track in terms of protecting the children of America. So, like, let's say a child labor law is, up to be passed in Wisconsin. I think they did pass a recent law that changes the age of when children can do certain kinds of jobs. So, how do working America sort of respond to that in real time, or do you do that afterward? What does that look like, Karen?
Well, we are very attuned to what are the issues that are really important in that state and in that community. And very often we will run a campaign when we're at the door that's about passing legislation. So for example, in Arizona, we've been working on a campaign to uh, uh, put some limits on the utility rates because they are sky high, especially with a perpetual heat wave in the state. And so that's more important than it is in Wisconsin, although heat's getting important in Wisconsin too. But in Philadelphia, we worked on a minimum wage law, and later after that, a wage theft law. So our campaigns where we ask people to take action reflect what is important and possible to win in their community or in their state.
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, I
go ahead.
also
Go, Joe, please add
yeah,
on.
I also think it's helpful to note that with our survey tracking, but also with that first question when we come to your door, always being what is the thing that you care about right now? What keeps you up at night? Is it allows us not only to be reactive, but allows us to be proactive, right? Because we have the ability to be able to track emerging trends for what folks are mentioning on the door, whether that's public safety, whether that's healthcare, whether that's the cost of insulin. Like, we can both react to things sort of in the news cycle that are happening, but we can also be a little more on the front foot when we say, for example, in Philly, we're like, wow, everyone is mentioning emergency room wait times, which was something that came up a few months ago, to say, maybe there is something here. Let's now begin to build out programs to address the concerns that we are seeing folks already have. So I think it can be both reacting in real time, but also having some sense of sort of historical data of what people told us they cared about in the past, and also two, when we have those canvassers having that hour-long conversation or debriefs at the end of the night, we can see, all of the sudden some issues are beginning to pop up, and that allows us to sort of be able to hone in on things that we think might continue to be sort of on the minds of voters or folks that we're talking to.
Okay. So let's sort of dig into a little bit about what you guys have found out about how voters are feeling. Karen, you mentioned a lot of work that you did right after the debate. And just sort of, I don't want to dwell on it because we're clearly moving on, but I do think it's important to think about how, non-political Americans were how they were framing this election, because it is going to be a different message for them, obviously, than people like, us on this call who perseverate on this stuff. So I just would love to hear your perspective um, on where people were and how you're going to be talking to these voters. You said you now have to go out again and have a whole new conversation.
Well, or we have to at least use our awesome research capacity to recalibrate where people are at and who are going to be the most likely people to waver and the most likely people to be persuaded. And I think that probably changes in this environment. Yeah, but our members were not having the same take that the editorial board of the New York Times was. They literally, half of them, and we put out a report on this, said that they weren't paying any attention. And then and we gave them a, rate the candidates A to F, and mostly both candidates failed. That there was, so it wasn't this categorical wipeout. Now, Biden did a terrible job. I'm not saying that that wasn't the case, but it didn't have this massive impact on these voters. Now, they're not all voters, but if we want to get them, we need to pay attention to how they're responding. We have not been seeing anything about the reaction to the assassination attempt, and we certainly haven't seen, we haven't been able to calculate yet what the effect is of Kamala Harris being a likely new candidate, but we're finding out.
More to come on that. Yeah. And so when you guys, let's stick with our quadrant. We're still working through it. The survey testing, because I always find that to be really interesting. You described it as sort of like how we decide if a medicine works, right? So can you give us an example of sort of, what that survey would sound like for your message testing, like a sample message? I think that'd be really interesting for everybody.
Joe, do you want to?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we've been doing a lot recently is doing what we're calling good news boosting, right? Which is essentially targeted Facebook ads to folks' membership in certain geographical areas. And so what we can do for that is we can mock up, for the sake of simplicity, we can say 5 different ads, but in most instances, right, it can be on the magnitude of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 different variations of an ad, whether it be about a candidate, whether it be about, hey, the Arizona example, is the cost of utilities a barrier for you? Do you ever have to choose between, paying an electricity bill and getting something that you want at the grocery store? So I think we can tweak. Sometimes that tweak is the addition of a graphic. Sometimes that tweak is something as simple as like 1 or 2 words or a specific phrase. And so what we do then is we can pump those ads out targeting to one group, sort of they'll get the change, another group won't get the change. We sort of see in the Facebook context, or we can even, expand that to sort of a text message contact. We can say, hey, do you ever have trouble affording your utility bills? Send that out to folks. To the other folks, we either don't send out, we'll send out a slightly different message. At the end, we can see what engagement looks like. Does one get more responses than the other? Does one get responses that are favorable? Are folks sort of turned off by a specific message by responding either negatively or not responding as much? And then we sort of continually repeat the process to refine, okay, look, folks really tune into something when we use the line around, having to choose. No one should have to choose between paying their electricity bill and childcare costs. So what that really allows us to do is play around with messaging. Again, sometimes it's the very core of the concept, and sometimes it's, things that you might not think would make a difference, but a message that is 1 sentence instead of 2 sentences. Pump that out, and we can see what the difference is in uptake, in response rates, in sort of general sense of like positive or negative reactions, and then we can run it again. And then when we find the thing that is working best for a specific demographic in a specific geographical area, then we can sort of go forward with a campaign to really engage with folks in using language and terms and tone that we find is sort of speaking best to the moment and the ways in which they're experiencing a certain political issue.
I mean, that's a really big undertaking, it sounds like. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that's happening not only on Facebook ads, right? That's happening over text messages. That's happening on the canvas every night. Hey, everyone's mentioning healthcare. Maybe we should change our wrap slightly so that we can preempt sort of what folks are talking about or certain like obstacles that we need to overcome. So yeah, it's not only happening with one thing, but it's happening with all of those tactics simultaneously so that sort of it's always constantly like something can always just be a little bit better, a little bit sharper. And we're never quite satisfied with sort of the language or the approach.
That's amazing. Karen, I'd love to have you just share with us before we wrap up of a historical perspective. And then I'd love to hear a little bit about what your needs are for the work ahead before the election, so we can just make sure we promote what you all are doing. So just give us a quick overview of how you're trying to change the language that we're using to think about American workers.
Kitty, I'm reading a book right now called The Playbook, and it's a history of the federal theater project under FDR in the 1936 and 1937, 38. And this was a public theater program that was based on the experience of workers. It was very radical in its content, and hundreds of thousands of working people went to go see these plays. They'd go to these plays in their communities, and it's a reminder of what's acceptable in certain times and what isn't. What is the view of society back on its heels of working people, and of course it's very different now, as you say. There's not much room for workers, but it has been expanding because of what workers have been doing. I think what we found most importantly is that union favorability is through the roof right now. Over the last 4 or 5 years, it's been growing. It's as high as it's ever been. 85% of people under 30 are favorable towards unions. It's astonishing. And the American public as a whole, it's something on the order of 72, 73, 74%. That's a big change. I think partly it's because big corporations feel like, oh, that's not a threat. We don't have to go vilify them all the time, which is why unions are often not seen as favorable. But we know, and I think the word is getting out, that if union wages and benefits rise, they do for all workers, and that the idea that someone should be backing you up is something that everybody finds appealing. So we're really gratified that that's the case. What's really important to unions now is to change the laws so that it's possible for working people to make the personal decision about whether they join an organization or not. And that's what's standing in the way. So it's the issues are healthcare, wages, retirement, those kinds of issues, but it's also just even to have the right to have a say about what your job should be like, or the right to just join an organization, which your boss gets to decide whether you do or not in the United States. Most working people are not looking at how others look at them. They're really just trying to solve their day-to-day problems. That hasn't changed for them. The working, the low wage working class person has never had a lot of status in our society, and that hasn't changed. It's whether the tools exist to change that.
I appreciate that. There's one question in the chat that I did not get to, so I just wanted to make sure that I ask it. It's from Judith, and she said, because we did talk about what you're hearing on the doors. a lot, but she wanted to know if anyone is talking about Project 2025 or the dangers of a Trump 2.0. It doesn't sound like the folks you're
No,
talking
it's,
to
you
are
know, I
focused on it like we are.
really, I know. I mean, I'm obsessed by it, right? And the AFL-CIO has a wonderful website, which I think is in we've sent you as a link, which is a searchable website on Project 2025 on workers' issues. The I just talked to our executive director, Matt Morrison, about this. No, Project 2025 is not an issue for the folks at the door, for the most part. And for the most part, this isn't a vote on democracy and the future of the country. That's not uniform. Some, you get a little bit, but that's not what's gonna sway the hundreds of thousands of votes that we need in battleground states.
Right. It's good to know. So what's your budget look like? What do you need to get all this work done? This incredible amount of work and contact that you're going to be having with Americans over the next few months. We have 102 days apparently until the election. So,
We especially need money for the digital online campaign that Joe was describing. Which reaches millions of people and is part of that layering that's so important for making an overall impact on people. So your contributions to that, especially C4, C5 contributions, would make a big difference. We'd love to have your support.
we're just so grateful for what you're doing and working with these Americans who don't get talked to enough or heard enough. So